Right now, I think in Western civilization, we're having a crisis of meaning, and that's pretty obvious from a couple simple facts. We're the most prosperous, free society in the history of humanity. If you could pick any time to be born, you would pick right now, right here. There's no other time to pick. A baby born today can expect to live in excess of 80 years in incredible material prosperity that the richest people living in 1900 could never have considered. The average person in 1850s Europe died before the age of 40. In 1900, 1 in 10 children in the United States died before their first birthday. We now live in a country where infant mortality is unbelievably low, in a civilization where if you have a baby and the baby is born even remotely healthy, that baby will live for another 8 decades in health and prosperity. We live in a society where we have tremendous freedom to basically do what we want. A society where we get to choose how we live our lives. We get to bear the consequences of those choices. And in many cases, we don't even bear the consequences of those choices because the government is there to provide a social safety net. And yet, we seem unhappier than ever in many ways. The opioid epidemic is taking an increasing number of lives. Actual life expectancy in the United States has declined for the last couple of years, which is unheard of in a civilized society. It's been rising consistently year on year for decades. You can look at the rates of unhappiness in society. You can look at the rates of depression. You can look at drug use. You can look at the fact that, according to polls, our trust in key institutions has dramatically decreased. You can look at the fact that fewer and fewer of us trust our neighbors or even know our neighbors. It's not just economic divide. This is not a question of rich versus poor, because a lot of these problems seem to span economics. There are a lot of very unhappy rich people, a lot of very angry rich people, and you can feel it in the 2016 election particularly. This is when I started to feel it. It felt like there was something different happening. People were truly enraged at one another. You're really enraged, looking at each other and saying, I can't be friends with you because we differ on policy. We see it in the preparation for the 2020 race, where the easiest way to run in 2020 is by castigating the motives of your opponent as somehow inferior or terrible. To take a quick example, when Mayor Pete Buttigieg over in South Bend, Indiana declared, I have to say that I was kind of attracted to his candidacy because he was the only person running who didn't seem like a crazy person. Right? Pete Buttigieg said, I disagree with the founders of Chick-fil-A on their politics, but they make a pretty good chicken sandwich. And that sounded pretty good to me. And then in the last couple of weeks, we have seen Mayor Buttigieg, who has never been mistreated by Vice President Mike Pence, not once in his life, talk about Mike Pence as though Mike Pence is out to get him. Suggest that Mike Pence is filled with animus and rage and anger, and that Mike Pence is trying to victimize him. There's no evidence of any of these things. In 2014, when Buttigieg, a member of the National Guard, was called into service, Mike Pence personally called him to thank him. In 2015, when Buttigieg came out of the closet, Mike Pence was asked about it. He said, I think Buttigieg is a good man. And now Buttigieg is going around bad-mouthing Pence, suggesting that he's a fanatic straight out of The Handmaid's Tale, and imputing to him an animus that Pence has never exhibited, suggesting that Pence is motivated by this evil hatred for gay people that Pence obviously does not have in his life. And it's easy to do that. We're doing this on all sides of the aisle, suggesting that people we disagree with simply on politics, that this is really about their underlying motives. They are bad people, and thus it's okay for us to be mean to them and be terrible to them. So what exactly has happened? I think what has happened is that there is a God-shaped hole in the American heart, and we are filling it with tribalism, and we are filling it with partisanship, and we are filling it with rage. And this is coming from somebody who spends his entire life in politics. And I'm not innocent in this, because anyone in politics is not. I've tried to do my best. I've tried to repent when I've done wrong. But I think that if you engage in the political sphere, it's hard not to get sucked into it. But the question is, do you try to do better? I do try to do better, I hope.